Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason, speaking to you in my basement in the great state of Kansas. And today I'm doing kind of a random video. I just been thinking it's a new year, kind of. We're now in February, so it's the second month of the year. But I always like, in the new year, I always like looking at what movies are having anniversaries of this year. You know, what came out 50 years ago, 25 years ago, 75 years ago. Anyway, so I kind of, something I was just kind of for fun researching, and I wrote down some movies I thought that were significant. They're having anniversaries this year. I thought it'd be interesting to look at and talk about a little bit on here. I went back as far as 85 years on here, and then went down from there, uh, usually by 5 or 10 years apart. Anyway, so starting with 85 years, I wrote down two movies. So this is 1937. It's been 85 years. The big one to me was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Came out this year. And that was, of course, the very first animated full-length movie. Of course, came from Disney, the first Disney movie, and of course, significant because we never had a full-length animated movie before. In fact, they didn't know if it could be done. I mean, there's definitely questions of can you make an animated movie, because there was animated shorts. Disney made a lot of animated shorts, and other companies did. And so there's question of can we actually make a full length feature and be entertaining, and and a lot of people, yeah, probably were doubters and thought that couldn't happen, but Disney did it. Snow White was the first movie. It was huge, did really well, and of course Disney is the biggest company today. Other movie I thought I'd highlight is a Marx Brothers movie called A Day at the Races. I'm not personally a Marx Brothers fan. I watch some of their big hits, but a lot of times their movies show up on like, top 100 lists of best movies or best comedies. I seem to see this one and Night of the Opera. I think is another one. Seem to be at the top. Duck Soup. Yeah, I think those three are always in the list of like top movies. So Marx Brothers definitely very influential and very popular. Anyways, and so I thought, well, I'll put that in there. A Day at the Races. Anyways, 85 years old this year. So let's go to 80 years. There's a couple big ones. One really big one here. This is movies that came out in 1942. The big one to me is Casablanca, which won Best Picture, of course, that year, and is usually in the top 10, if not top 5 best movies ever made in a lot of lists, like AFI's Top 100 Movies list. It's an okay movie. It's not one of my favorites personally. Uh, it's a little maybe overhyped for me, but I understand it's very popular and people love the movie. I also throw in Bambi, which was another big Disney movie. It came out this year. Again, not a favorite of mine, but obviously has a big influence, especially the Bambi's mother dying was definitely like a huge scene for me as a kid. Like I think I cried when I saw that when I was little, because it's shocking for a kid to see a character die like that. You don't expect it anyway. So I put Bambi in there, and then I have a couple more personal favorites or movies that I think are well worth the watch if you haven't watched them. I put Mrs. Miniver in here. It won Best Picture. Well, no, it won Best Picture. I might be wrong on that one. Cause I looked these up just now on Google, what the best movies were of each of these years, and I was thinking Mrs. Miniver won Best Picture too, though. So I must have got something wrong there. But it has Yankee Doodle Dandy, which is a decent musical about Conan, I think, a real life songwriter, and Yankee Doodle Dandy was one of his big hits. He wrote Over There, which was a big patriotic song. Anyways, he's hugely based on a true story of a real person who was hugely influential in music writing. Anyways, it's a decent movie that I would check out. I put Holiday Inn in there as a popular uh, Christmas comedy musical with Bing Crosby, and what's the other guy? Now I forget his name, but uh, a lot of music and dance numbers. Uh, Unfortunately, it has a blackface number in there, which I would think probably get this movie canceled. I don't know if it'd be hard to find this movie because of that, but it is a weird scene. But I know it's a fairly popular movie. And then I throw in Road to Morocco, which is a another Bing Crosby movie, and Bob Hope, Hope and Crosby. They did a lot of these Road to movies. They made, I think, 6 or 7 of them. Very popular buddy comedies. Anyways, and Road to Morocco, I think, is by far the best one of the 6 or 7. Definitely is the one to watch. I think very funny. Hope and Crosby, great chemistry, and got a lot of good fourth wall breaking and a couple songs here and there. Yeah, definitely one worth to check out, I think. And Hope and Crosby are hugely popular this time period. So that's 80 years. 75 years. I only have a couple movies on this list. The big one to me is Miracle on 34th Street. One of the biggest Christmas movies of all time. And just the Christmas season wasn't too long ago, so it's fairly fresh on my mind. It's one I try to watch every Christmas. I think excellent Christmas movie, and I like Christmas movies, so very good. Young Natalie Wood, I believe, as a little kid, cute little kid. Another Christmas kind of classic is The Bishop's Wife. They had Cary Grant as this angel that visits this bishop and his wife, and anyways, it's a decent movie. Not one of my favorites necessarily, but I think worth a watch during Christmas time. I also throw in a movie called Life with Father, not as well known. William Powell, one of his last movies, and it's actually Elizabeth Taylor, I believe. She's a kind of somewhat young girl in this, but really funny movie. I highly recommend if you can find it. Life with Father. These all came out in 1947. So let's go to 70 years. Movies that are 70 years old now. Actually, I wrote down only a couple, but they're really big ones from this period. This is movies come out in 1952. So this is about almost around the time my parents are being born. One of the big ones is The Quiet Man with John Wayne, Catherine O'Hara, John Ford movie taking place in Ireland. One of my favorite John Wayne movies and John Ford directed movies. More of a comedy, romantic comedy movie, but very well done. And I love the scenery of Ireland in it. Another one's High Noon, obviously huge. Another movie that with Gary Cooper won his second Oscar for Best Actor, and it's considered one of the great Western movies. And it's got this whole bad guys are coming at noon, so the old sheriff is trying to get a gang together to fight this gang that's coming in to kill him. Anyway, so it's very iconic movie about all that gunfight at noon, and considered up there. Another one that's always on every top 100 list I see of favorite movies. I'm not really that big a fan of it personally. I think it's a little slow moving, and just not as interested in it. But I know it's hugely popular, so I put it on here. The other movie is probably the biggest musical, maybe considered of all time, Singing in the Rain, with Kelly. Forgetting the names of some of the people, but also Gene Kelly's one of my favorite my favorite dancer, I think, in any movie. I love the way he dances, and he does a lot of good musicals at this time period. And of course, Singing in the Rain, hugely popular. It's, I think, AFI's top 100 musicals. This was number one, and it was really high up on the top 100 movies list, I believe. So I feel like any list about best musical, Singing in the Rain is usually at the very top of the list. Obviously, there's that famous Singing in the Rain where Gene Kelly's singing and it's raining and he has an umbrella. He's going around lampposts and he's splashing in the water. Hugely one of the most iconic scenes of all time. So obviously, Singing in the Rain, really huge. So I'm going to jump to 60-year anniversary. With this is movies that came out in 1962. I have a couple more movies in this one. I have How the West Was Won, very epic Western, one of the most star-studded westerns or movies of all time. I mean, it has so many famous people in it, so many great actors, like Henry Fonda and Jimmy Stewart, Gregory Peck, I believe, is in it, and a bunch of other. I mean, it's maybe has the biggest number of stars I've ever seen in the movie, and it's a pretty long movie, and it takes place over many, many years, but definitely one to check out if you like westerns. I put in The Longest Day. I think it's another one which it has made the biggest cast of all time. Has John Wayne, I know, has a small part in it, and lots of famous actors. I'd have to look it up to name them all, but lots of great, huge actors in this movie, all about D-Day and World War II, and it's probably one of the best movies that just talk about D-Day basically, and it shows you going through. Obviously, Saving Private Ryan is probably that scene is probably the best D-Day scene of all time. Of course, very horrific, very violent. Of course, this is more of a G-rated, PG-rated version of D-Day, but still, I think it's a very long movie, but I think very well. If you like war movies, I think it's a good one to check out. The Music Man. I think if you like musicals, I like musicals, so this is a pretty decent musical. And I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite, but it's still not bad. I think Robert Preston plays the main character, who is a con man that cons this little town in Iowa. In fact, my dad and I went to Iowa, and we went and visit something about this movie. The person who wrote wrote the musical has a thing in Iowa because the whole the whole movie takes place in Iowa, which they call Iowa sometimes. It's a whole song about Iowa. Anyways, I think we even went around and asked people if you ever call it Iowa because of that movie. And I don't know if everybody understood our joke because it was from The Music Man. But yeah, definitely one to check out, I think, if you like musicals. Probably the best movie on this list is To Kill a Mockingbird. Obviously, huge book. We all read it. In high school, I read it when I was a freshman. We had to for English class, and of course watched the movie. And I watched the movie millions of times. Seems like since I've been a kid. Excellent. Gregory Peck, one of the great performances of all time. I believe in AFI's top 100 heroes or top 10 heroes. He was number one hero on the hero list. Yeah, just a great movie. Great court scene, dealing with racism. And somebody fighting against racism. Very good emotional movie. Definitely have to recommend that one. Really good movie. Also, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, another John Ford movie. Has John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart, two of my favorite actors in it. Yeah, just excellent Western. An excellent John Ford movie. Definitely, it's one check out amongst one of my favorite John. I think I probably said that already. John Wayne movies. One I always like to check out. I put Dr. No. The very first James Bond movie came out 60 years ago, which is interesting because we just had No Time to Die, the last James Bond movie. I don't know. There's been 25 plus movies. I want to say maybe around 25 movies. So it's one of the biggest franchises, biggest action franchise of all time. That's spanned 60 years now. I mean, it's pretty incredible. Of course, Sean Connery, he passed away not too long ago, playing James Bond in this. In fact, I just bought this Blu-ray just a couple days ago because I wanted to rewatch all the old James Bond movies because I've always had a lot of nostalgia for watching them when I was a kid. Anyway, so it's not one of the best James Bond movies, but it's very important, I think, because to me, James Bond is the first really big action franchise of all time. I mean, we didn't really have action movies like James Bond, these spy thrillers, gun shooting until this point. Anyway, so a very important movie, I think, for action and all that. Also, you also throw in probably the biggest, most famous movie from this year is Lawrence of Arabia. Obviously won Best Picture. I forget the actor, Peter, what's his name? Didn't win, but was also, his career really went off after this movie. And again, it's a movie that's always in the top 10, top 5 favorite movies of all time on any list, like AFI's top 100 list. To me, it's a little boring, a little too long. I don't really care too much for the story personally, but it's really well made, really well acted, great music. Anyway, it's definitely one of the biggest movies of all time. Let's go to 50 years ago. These are movies that came out in 1972. The biggest one is obviously The Godfather. One of the biggest movies of all time. Again, a movie that's usually at the very top five, if not the number one, number two. Well, I guess Citizen Kane is usually number one, but Godfather is usually up there, 2 or 3 on any list. I mean, uh, highly popular, always talked about, highly quoted movie. Of course, Best Picture, Best Actor for Marlon Brando. Great cast, Al Pacino. One of the movies that really made him a star, I think, afterwards. And a movie I enjoy. It's not my favorite, but it's definitely a movie it's a Blu-ray that I have, that I've watched many times, and it's definitely a classic. I threw in The Poseidon Adventure. Always a fun movie, great cast, a great disaster movie. If you like disaster movies, Poseidon Adventure is one of the great old disaster movies, I think. I threw in Deliverance in here, just because it's such a kind of influential, iconic, not influential maybe, but iconic movie in a sense. I don't think it's not one of my favorite movies, but it definitely has some scenes that are, been very much talked about since the banjo scene was the biggest scene there. There's also I don't know how to say, a rape scene that is very controversial. I don't know, very it makes a really hard movie to watch for me, anyways. So it's not a movie I enjoy watching personally, but I know it's big because of that. I mean, very pushing the edge, I guess you should say, for movie making, doing some things that you've never seen in a movie, pushing the boundaries. I guess I'm trying to say, really a movie that pushed the boundaries of what you can do in a movie. So I had to put it in here. I put in The Way of the Dragon, classic Bruce Lee movie. It was one of the last movies that he made before he died. In fact, I feel like it came out maybe after he died. I think he died, and maybe this one came out. It was the only movie that he directed, also, while starring in it, and it's very famous for Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris fight at the end in the Roman Coliseum. Really good fight scene. Of course, 2 iconic fighters, Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris. Still a fun scene to watch. I still have watched that recently and still enjoy that scene a lot. Yeah, so I'll just leave there. 50 years. So I'm going to go down to 40 years. The lower down I go, the more movies I put in, just because more movies I can remember seeing myself. So 40 years ago, 1982, so this is right before I was born, because I'm almost 40 myself, so getting kind of close to movies that I'm kind of familiar with. I threw The Verdict in there. It's a Paul Newman courtroom drama. Not one of my favorites, but I know a lot of people that like Paul Newman put this as their favorite Paul Newman movie, so I put it on here. I put Sophie's Choice on here. I mean, Sophie's Choice is a term that we use all the time. Oh, that's a real Sophie's Choice. And the movie's hard to watch, but Meryl Streep, probably the best female performance I've ever seen in my life, or best acting performance I've ever seen. I mean, incredible. She plays this Polish Jew that went through the Holocaust, and this is like years later, and she talks about it. And so yeah, very quotable, I guess, the whole Sophie's Choice thing. Really well known. Everybody, when you say Sophie's Choice, I don't know if everybody knows what it is, but I think if you do, oh my gosh. She had made a really terrible choice in that movie. I threw Annie in there. I like musicals, so that's a classic musical for me that I watched as a kid. I've always enjoyed that one. I want to say it might be on Disney Plus. So I think it's on one of the streaming channels. E.T., one of Spielberg's big ones. I believe it broke the box office record when it came out. E.T. the Alien, of course, E.T. Phone Home, one of the most quotable lines, and his whole finger glowing thing. I think it's actually a pretty boring movie, and I don't think it holds up very well, but it's hugely popular at the time. I put Poltergeist in here, another Steven Spielberg movie. It's a horror movie, like a haunted house. I've never seen it, but I just know it's very influential for horror movies, so I put that in there. I put Fast Times at Ridgemont High in here. Another movie that I think kind of well known for being like the stoner comedy. And I don't know if it's the first stoner comedy, but I feel like it's one of the most influential stoner comedies. and I think it's one that's referenced a lot. So I thought I'd throw it in there. That is now 40 years old. Gandhi, which won Best Picture in '82. Huge epic movie. Ben Kingsley wins Best Actor for playing Gandhi. Great performance. Haven't seen it in a while. I just remember it being like 3 hours long, but good performance there. Blade Runner, Harrison Ford movie. Ridley Scott, I believe, directing. Definitely one of the big sci-fi movies of all time. Kind of almost before its time. I mean, the special effects are really great for 1982 and still kind of hold up pretty well. So they do a lot of interesting things in that movie, dealing with like robot androids or whatever. I've never been a fan of this movie, but people love this movie. It's huge, especially in the sci-fi world. It's one of the biggest movies. I threw Conan the Barbarian in there. It was Arnold Schwarzenegger's first big movie, so I thought I'd throw it in there. Wow, Arnold Schwarzenegger's acting for 40 years now. I don't know if he does much acting anymore, but his career has spanned 40 years pretty much now. Starting with Conan, which was hugely popular for him and made him the huge. Well, Terminator probably really made him a huge star, but this one definitely started him on the path. I put Tron in there. Again, not a great movie to me, but the special effects are pretty groundbreaking for its time, so I threw it on there. Some really cool special effects there. Tootsie, very good comedy with Dustin Hoffman dressing as a woman and pretending to be a woman and really doing a good job of looking like a woman and sounding like it. And great performance of Dustin Hoffman. Really good comedy. I threw in there Tootsie. And then the last movie I'm going to talk about, one of my favorites, is First Blood, or Rambo First Blood with Sylvester Stallone. Great movie. It's an action movie with really not that much action, but it's more about being a soldier and after Vietnam and coming back home and dealing with, people not liking you for being in Vietnam and negative stereotypes of Vietnam veterans, and also dealing with PTSD after Vietnam War and him kind of going crazy on this town. Anyway, excellent movie. Great performance from Sylvester Stallone, and a big franchise that he still does, it seems like. He made another Rambo movie not too long ago. Probably the last one, I would guess, for Sylvester Stallone, since he's getting kind of up there in age. So now I'm down to 30 years, 30-year anniversaries. Again, I threw in a lot of movies because now we're talking about movies that I saw in the theater. So I have some nostalgia for. I have Wayne's World, great comedy with Mike Myers, Dana Carvey. Saturday Night Live characters turned to one of the most successful, probably, Saturday Night Live movies that they've ever made, and really made Mike Myers, I think, a star. He was already hugely popular in Saturday Night Live, but this really showed how, and I think he maybe wrote the script too, and showed what a great comedic, I don't know if I want to say legend, but something like that at the time. One of the most popular comedic actors of his time. Unforgiven won Best Picture. Clint Eastwood movie, directed and starred in, and won Best Director for. It's not a movie I care for too much, but it's another one that I see on every list of top 100 movies. It always seems to be up there, so definitely a very popular Western, so I threw that on there. My Cousin Vinny, I don't know, it's a movie that I think everybody knows about. Joe Pesci, a lot of courtroom. It's got a comedy with a lot of courtroom in it. What's her name? Marissa Tomei won Best Supporting Actress, and a lot of people think she didn't deserve it, so there's a lot of controversy with that. And it's a decent comedy and courtroom drama. Last of the Mohicans, Daniel Day-Lewis movie based off a book. It's an okay movie, but I know a lot of people just love this movie. Very, very popular at the time. A Few Good Men, a movie I love. Tom Cruise. To me, it's one of the great early Tom Cruise performances that show what a good actor. He can do comedy, he can do drama, and of course Jack Nicholson, I think, gives a great performance in this. And you got the most quotable movie line, best scene in a movie. You can't handle the truth. I mean, that quote has been said so many times and throughout so many different movies, and just in life, you love to say, you can't handle the truth. Such a great part of that movie. I threw a sentimental favorite in here, a movie called Three Ninjas. Because I remember I saw this movie in a drive. The first time I ever went to a drive-in movie, I went with my mom. My mom took me because I wanted to see this movie called Three Ninjas, which was these three kids that knew karate. Anyways, and I was a kid, so I really, really wanted to see this movie. And so my mom took me at a drive-in theater, and I loved this movie when I was a kid. It was like my favorite movie at the time, and so I have a lot of good memories of my mom taking me to that movie. It was just cool going to drive-in because that's not something I normally do. I'm gonna throw A League of Their Own. I think it's a decent movie that came out this year with Tom Hanks, one of my favorite actors of this period. And I even saw that not too long ago. Still holds up as I thought, a pretty good comedy about women's baseball. Reservoir Dogs, Quentin Tarantino's like first big movie, I believe, that came out. I'm not a fan, but I know a lot of people that like Tarantino consider this maybe one of his best movies, if not his best movie. Definitely, it was a different type movie, very violent, but definitely Tarantino's definitely like his own genre now, and this kind of started that. I threw The Mighty Ducks in there because that was hugely popular when I was a kid. I always loved that movie, of course, about kids playing. I wasn't a hockey fan, but I loved watching kids do anything because I was a kid, and so I always enjoyed that one. White Men Can't Jump, another. I loved basketball, and I loved watching that because of all the basketball playing in that. But it's a good comedy. I remember they always do these "My Mama" jokes in the movie, and my favorite one was "Your mama wears space boots" as an insult, and I always thought that was one of my favorite "Your mama" jokes, and so that was one I would always pull out as a kid. Your mama wears space boots, or I think something like that, or astronaut boots or something, and it doesn't make any sense, but I don't know, just kind of random insult joke. I put Beethoven in here, which is about the dog Beethoven, the big Saint Bernard, because I remember my grandparents, Woody and Doris Berger, Grandpa and Grandma Berger, for me, maybe my sister Abby came. I'm sure it was me and my sister Abby, but my grandparents took me to that movie, so I just have. It's one of the first movies I remember watching in the movie theater, maybe the first one. And so, I don't know, I think back about that, and I enjoyed that movie quite a bit. Thought it was a good comedy. I haven't seen it in such a long time, but of course it makes me think of my grandparents, so I had to put that in there. I put Malcolm X in there. Not a movie I care for, but obviously hugely popular and great performance from Denzel Washington. Sister Act was a very popular comedy with Whoopi Goldberg. Really, Whoopi, I think, was already kind of somewhat of a star at the time, but this was definitely one of her biggest movies. And then lastly, I'm going to throw in Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, which I saw twice in the theater, if I remember right. I really loved that movie. Always loved the Home Alone movies growing up. Of course, a kid, again, always loved when a kid gets it over with adults, and so that's another one where the kid outsmarts the two stupid criminals. So I enjoyed that. I'm almost done with this. 25 years anniversary, which I didn't write down what year that was, 1997, I believe. We had Good Will Hunting, a big movie that really threw Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, kind of started their careers to stardom, I believe. They started really starring in movies after this and became huge leading men and stars in all kinds of movies, especially Matt Damon really went on to Ben Affleck did too. Of course, Ben Affleck went on to become also a good director. They still make movies, but Matt Damon, I think, maybe has had the biggest career out of that. And of course, Robin Williams gives us this great performance, wins the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. You have that great scene of "It's not your fault, it's not your fault." Great scene in there. One of my favorite movies that came out is Life is Beautiful. It's an Italian movie, Roberto Benigni directed and starred in. He won the Oscar for Best Actor and Director for the movie, which is maybe the first time we've had a foreign director and actor win in that category, if I remember right. But just really, it's such a unique movie. It takes me too long to really talk about that movie, but I have the Blu-ray, and it's one movie I'll probably talk about at some point because it's somehow a comedy yet very sad and tragic at the same time. Yeah. The biggest movie is Titanic. Of course, Titanic broke all the box office records for the time and held on to it for a while until Avatar, I think. Of course, another James Cameron movie. but won 11 Oscars, tied for the most Oscar wins. Um, Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio. It really, to me, started them, made them stars. Um, they've been in movies, but this was a real big one for those two, I think. And those two went on to become great, actors and win Oscars and be nominated and really star in a lot of movies. So, huge movie, Titanic. I threw Men in Black in there. Will Smith just came off of Independence Day, I believe, in 1996. Independence Day was a huge blockbuster movie, and it was really a movie that made Will Smith a star and said, okay, Will Smith, you're going to be starring in these action movies for a while now because he was such a box office draw. This came in the next summer in 1997, Men in Black, teaming with Tommy Lee Jones, and it's more of a comedy, action, sci-fi, dealing with aliens. But Will Smith, of course, is great at comedy. But it's a real fun movie. I really like that one, Men in Black. And the last movie of 25 years I'm going to talk about is Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. Mike Myers, of course. I talked about Wayne's World. Wayne's World being the first one for Mike Myers. Then the Austin Powers franchise kind of become his biggest franchise, other than Shrek, I guess, would be the other big one for Mike Myers. Was kind of huge there for a while, even though he didn't make very many movies. And then he kind of fell off after Austin Powers 3, I think. And then he made The Love Guru, which was a big bomb, and he kind of disappeared. But he was hugely big at this point, and Austin Powers, quotable movie. Yeah, baby. Well, I didn't do the accent, but you can imagine a lot of people saying that one. And shall we shag now or shag later? Or, do I make you Randy? I mean, there's all these quotable lines, and the Dr. Evil, $1 million. Can't say enough of how much this comes into pop culture. So I had to put it in there. All right, I'm going to do 20 years and 10 years, and then I'll be done. 20 years movies. One of my favorites is Signs. A lot of people, I've heard a lot of backlash to Signs. People don't think it's a very good movie, but I love this movie. I saw it in the theater. Had a lot of great jump scares. I thought performances were great. Had some good comedy in there. Very well directed, I thought, movie, in my opinion. Ice Age was a pretty good anime movie that came out that year. Spider-Man, hugely popular, one of the biggest superhero movies at that time, and really the first one that really used, felt like the technology, the special effects were catching up to where we can do these big superhero movies, and really started the superhero, helped start with that with X-Men, and Spider-Man kind of started the superhero craze that we see today, where there's so many superhero movies that come out all the time. But yeah, and it broke like the 1 week box office record or something when it came out. Let's talk about My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Huge comedy at this time. I remember my mom went and saw it, I think first, and then she came and she loved it. My mom loves this movie, and so she said, you have to see this movie. So I went and saw it. Didn't think I would like it, but I was surprised. It was a good comedy, and it ended up making tons of money. I remember it was crazy because it made like okay money. It's opening weekend, and usually opening weekend you make the most money out of the movie for box office. But this movie was a movie that was okay money, and then it just grew. It kept every week, it kept raising up the ranks and kept making more money. It was so strange how the word of mouth made this a huge movie, and so much that it got nominated for screenplay, I believe, original screenplay. But a hugely popular movie for that year, 2002. And I should say 2002 is when I graduated from high school, so I'm coming up to my 20-year anniversary. So these are all movies I watched in my senior year in high school, basically, around that time. Chicago won Best Picture, big musical. Not musicals don't win Best Picture very often, so it was a huge deal, I think. And it's very excellent made musical. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, the second Harry Potter movie came out in that franchise, and Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, the second Lord of the Rings movie, also came out 20 years ago. So let's end with 10-year anniversaries, not that long ago, but always fun for me to look at these and go, wow, it's been that long? Like, I don't know why, it always surprises me when I look at what's been 10 years. And it's hard, not as many big movies, of course. It takes a little bit of time to get more well known, I think. The big one to me is the Avengers, of course. Hugely incredible how they were able to take different superheroes from different movies and put them in one movie. it was unthinkable at the time. I mean, I don't think now it's hard to understand the scope of it. But at the time, that was just groundbreaking and mind blowing that we can have Captain America and Iron Man, Thor, Incredible Hulk all in the same movie. It was like, what? They make their own individual movies, but the team up idea was such an incredible idea. Of course, now we get the Justice League, and everybody wants to do a team up movie. That's like the big thing after this because it made tons and tons of money. So everybody wants to make a team up movie, and so it was huge for that. The Hunger Games was really big, kind of sci-fi, futuristic movie. Of course, the books were hugely popular, and then Jennifer Lawrence starring. She was just right at that time, just starting to become well known. So the Hunger Games really made her a star, I think, because she got to star in this big franchise that made a lot of money, the Hunger Games. So that was a big deal. Wreck-It Ralph was the big Disney movie that year. Excellent movie. I have to watch that again at some point. But yeah, I think it's a really good Disney movie. 21 Jump Street, really funny comedy. One of the funniest comedies probably in the last 10 years. Ted was a decent one too that came out then. I don't know if it still holds up or not. Lincoln, the Spielberg movie about Abraham Lincoln, starring Daniel Day-Lewis. And it's one of the last movies Daniel Day-Lewis has done, which I can't believe again. I'm like, that's been 10 years. I can't believe it. It's an okay movie. Excellent performances. Tommy Lee Jones also is excellent. Of course, then it's about a very important subject matter. Then the last movie I'm going to talk about, 10 Years Old, is one of my favorite movies. Is Les Miserables with Hugh Jackman. And great musical. One of my favorite musical, maybe my favorite musical of all time. Not my favorite, but it's definitely top like 3 for me. Best musical ever made. I mean, performances are absolutely amazing. Music is phenomenal. So many great songs, and just the musical score is something I love to listen to. And yeah, just very emotional at times, and I just love the way it's made. It's one I watch constantly anyway. So, Les Miserables, 10 Years Old, 2012. Anyway, so those are just some looks at some anniversaries. I thought it'd be fun to look at them and see how old these movies have been, and see if there'll be some anniversary editions coming out soon with some of these. I thought I saw The Godfather. I saw some, maybe on YouTube, I saw some commercial about The Godfather being out in movie theaters. Like some movie theaters are going to replay that movie for the 50th anniversary. Anyway, so that'd be interesting. Anyway, so that's my video for today. Went a little longer than I was expecting, but I just wanted to cover all these movies and look back at them. And so thank you for watching the video, and thank you for liking it, and thank you to all subscribers for supporting the channel. I really appreciate you. Have a good day.